Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to Views on the News.
Was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the Caribbean drag.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that, guys?
Unlike our Saturday show, Global Atheist News, which is supposed to be delivered dispassionately, deadpan, although I can't resist the reaction sometimes, this is the show where we have opinions about the news. And two of our opinionated people from around the world are here tonight. Meet Dread Pyrate Higgs. How the devil are you?
I be well, thank you.
We love your background. And Paul Clark, how the devil are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Hiya.
Good. Nice to see you both. So the first item of the news. Mossab Hassan Youssef. He's the son of Sheikh Hassan Youssef, who was a co-founder of Hamas. And Mossab worked as an Israeli spy after deciding not to continue to be a Palestinian militant. He defected to Israel in 1997 and then moved to the United States in 2007, having done about 10 years of spying, I guess. But currently, he's caught speaking at the European Parliament. Take a look at this clip. If I can find it. It's here somewhere. I know it's here. Right down the bottom, and here it is. Go.
Thank you for finding the time to listen. I see many members absent, unfortunately. I thought this would be a great opportunity to share first-hand experience, and most importantly, I'm nothing but eyewitness. And it looks like many people want to decide on behalf of the children in the Middle East without listening to the children, without listening to a child of that conflict. It's not important to have someone who have lived it, to provide first-hand experience and information, so when they make their decisions on our behalf, on behalf of the children in the Middle East, they don't make mistake. For example, by funding criminals for decades from the public money that has been advancing terrorism and chaos that brought us to this low point of destruction and barbarism. And of course, none of them would take responsibility. They want to sit in comfort and decide on behalf of this generation and the next generations. It's not important for them to come and take a seat for half an hour and listen.
I've seen that guy elsewhere.
Yeah, he's got quite a high profile.
He's been pretty vocal and outspoken, right?
Yeah. So what do you think? I mean, he's chiding people for not attending his particular slot in the European Parliament, but he makes some strong points.
And unfortunately, the people to whom he is speaking are not there to listen. So it almost seems like a waste of time to, chide people that aren't being chided. Right?
Yeah. But if anybody, he knows what he's talking about. I mean, he used to be a Palestinian militant. He then became an Israeli spy, and then he escaped to America. So he's pretty steeped in this conflict, and he should have a lot of information that we want. And that speech went on for about half an hour, and you can see the whole of it. It's well worth watching. in the details underneath the Global Atheist News Show that went out yesterday.
Right.
It's a shame, isn't it, that here we have first-hand information source, and it's not respected.
It's very typical of people wanting to hear only their point of view, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And not wanting to hear the opposite point of view.
Oh.
And it's something all of us have to try not to do.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Not
fall prey to our own motivated reasoning, right?
Yeah, yeah. We there's a tendency to stay within our own bubble, and to be skeptical about alternative opinions.
We three should all go to church.
I've been there enough. I've been there plenty.
Well, my dad was an atheist, and occasionally, not very often, he would send me to church.
Yeah.
And he would say, "Do you good to hear the other point of view?"
Yeah,
yeah. And I think it was probably reverse psychology on his part.
And it worked. Well done.
It worked.
Just had to steel you against it, sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
It's either that or actually reading the Bible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah.
That'll do it for most people. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
The deep dive.
Somebody, I can't remember who said it. The Bible is exactly how you'd expect it to be if it wasn't the Word of God.
Right.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
So I've got somebody else here who you would think was an authority on this Middle Eastern World War situation. It's Colonel Richard Kemp, who was previously the head of British forces in Afghanistan. But here he is in an interview with Konstantin Kissin and his colleague on trigonometry. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with that channel, but it's a very good channel. And again, this is a tiny clip from a very long and very informative interview. Here it is.
You're the former head of British forces in Afghanistan. You chaired Cobra. So when you say the President of the United States should be court-martialed, what are you talking about? And why do you say that?
His action in relation to Israel has been catastrophic. I would say treachery. Hamas know they can never really defeat Israel. They may want to, but they know they can't. They're not that strong. And so the only way of getting rid of Israel is to delegitimize it. Most of the Arab countries in the region are right behind Israel. They want Israel to defeat Hamas. They want Israel to defeat Hezbollah. They want Israel to defeat Iran. This is the first army in history that I know of that has deliberately wanted its enemy to kill its own civilian population.
What's your evidence for that, Colonel?
There, that was a taster. You really want to watch the whole thing.
That's really quite tantalizing, but it certainly wasn't clear why he would want to have the current president court-martial. That didn't come through.
No, it's a teaser to watch the whole show.
So what is, if you could put it in a sentence, what is the rationale for him making that statement?
Ignorance, really. I mean, he's thinking that American foreign policy is hit and miss. It's not based on any deep understanding of the situation.
Oh, and so therefore America is complicit in the ongoing conflict in that respect. Yeah, I see. Okay. I don't know how that amounts to a court-martial, but I guess I'll have to watch that thing.
Yeah, well, it's because he's a colonel. And didn't he look the epitome of a military man, eh? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I take it you don't want Biden court-martialed, Paul?
I get annoyed with Biden. The thing I get most annoyed with him about is Ukraine. I think he's drip feeding aid to Ukraine in a way that helps Russia.
Yeah.
And I think long ago he should have given the Ukrainians what they need to defeat Russia.
Yeah.
And it's the opposite with Israel, isn't it? Israel seems to get whatever they want. and Biden does nothing to stop them bombing civilians in very large numbers.
Yeah.
But, you know, the Ukrainians are being bombed and having missiles sent to them, and they're not allowed to attack the places the bombs and missiles are coming from.
Yeah.
And I don't get it.
No consistency there.
Yeah, I think maybe there's an election coming up. Maybe that's stymieing him a bit, but
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
Well, apparently, if Trump gets in, he'll end the war in 24 hours, right?
Yeah, right.
Oh. Yeah, if you believe that, I don't know what to say, really. So, you know how culture has suddenly become global thanks to this technology. Well, it's reached Australia, where Sherry Markson speaks about what she calls the tsunami of hate that is plaguing the world. Take a look at this.
Authorities have failed to enforce the law as pro-Palestinian protesters celebrated the life of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. They called the terrorist leader a legend who will inspire resistance, in other words, terrorism, around the world. These are scenes I never imagined we'd see in our safe country. It's racism I never imagined would be tolerated by political leaders. This was Hyde Park in Sydney yesterday.
Severely injured, he threw a stick at a drone in final defiance against the illegal Zionist occupation. He died a warrior's death amongst his men, one with his people in defense of his land, of the innocent Palestinian children slaughtered against a genocidal invader and occupier and colonizer. In his death, he became a legend to be told for centuries, for his story will live on to inspire resistance all around the world.
That is clearly celebrating a terror leader who killed 1,200 Israelis and foreigners and also caused thousands of Palestinians to die. But her next remarks, in my view, are not only hate speech, but arguably incitement to violence as well.
Until our last breath, we will keep fighting the Zionist occupation. Leaders may fall, but the idea of resistance will never die. His martyrdom exposed Israeli propaganda. After watching their family torn into pieces, they see one option and one option only: that they die fighting like the legends that came before them. Yahya al-Muqawama, the resistance lives on. Thank you.
So, what do you think when, you know, countries like Australia, peaceful countries, tolerant countries, countries which respect democracy and the rule of law, have to be exposed to this irate harangue about one side of a dispute that's thousands of miles away in the Middle East?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, if I might just pop in just for a second, almost 6 months ago, there was a peace in the Middle East thing held here in little old Grand Forks. We're like 8,000 people here. And so they held it at a local church. And it was under the pretense that it was going to, you know, have representatives from, you know, both sides of the conflict to have a discussion about, you know, what solutions there may be. And as I dug a little bit into it, and I did not have to dig far, it was pro-Palestinian all the way. Yeah. And when I pointed this out to the organizer, well, guess what? I'm an Islamophobe. I'm, you know, a racist. I'm, you know, I hate Islam, you know, and it was just the vitriol all of a sudden was quite flowing freely and really no pretense to peace in the Middle East. Not that little old Grand Force could do anything about it anyway, right?
Yeah. Well, we're all being stirred up by their dispute.
Yeah.
Leave us alone.
Yeah. We got other things to think about. I want to wear my hat in my picture, for instance, you know.
Yeah.
It's pretty important to me.
Yeah. We don't ban it here.
I'd say
for the people.
The woman who was speaking didn't sound very Australian.
No.
And if she's not, maybe they should throw her out.
Well, that's a point of view. Sure.
Yeah, I think, you know, if your own citizens support a terrorist organization, there's little you can do if they go and make a speech. But I think if a visitor to your shores makes a pro-terrorist speech, you can throw her out, can't you?
Yeah.
We talked about this last week in the views on the news last week. Were you with us, Paul? Yes, you were. And we talked about this because there's an increasing feeling that we should be more selective about who we let in. And then if once in, they show themselves not to abide by our principles and values, we should kick them out.
Yeah, kind of like a probationary period, right?
Yeah. That's growing. That view is growing pace in the Western world.
Yeah, I was going to suggest too that you know, some might argue that there should be an equally vocal protest mounted by the other side as a reaction. Whereas I'm thinking along lines here with Paul about you know, having or maybe it was you, John, just having a point of view and sharing it, that there is no room in this country for their dispute. If they want to wage war on each other, leave it to them to do it and not polarize us illegitimately with a claim by either side that God has their backs, because clearly he doesn't.
Yeah. But then, of course, we're up against the weapons industry, aren't we? Eh?
Yes, of course. And social media interests and news outlets and all kinds of dark players out there.
Yeah. It's not an easy problem to solve.
More critical thinking skills should be taught. It should be taught in school. I think
Definitely.
that would be a big part of helping people get past this kind of false rhetoric.
Definitely. But then you're accused of kicking the can down the road, because, of course, school kids won't be in positions of power for another generation.
Well, you got to start somewhere. And starting on the back end is not working, clearly. It never has and probably never will. Right? You got to start with them young. Just like, I mean, that's how religious people get it done, right? They have send them to catechism, they train them right, and all of a sudden you got the Christian military out there fighting the good fight, right? Or whatever.
I think the trouble is you can't keep the world out of your country, can you?
No.
You know, I mean, there's in Britain there's the dispute between Pakistan and India, which has actually erupted into violence. Was it in Leicester?
Yep, it was Leicester.
There was violence between Hindus and Muslims, essentially. And there, you know, London has got immigrants from every part of the world. And the days where you could say, well, the world should stay away from our shores, they're gone, aren't they?
Yeah, for sure.
And we have to live with that. And I think there are legitimate grievances Palestinians have, and people are entitled to demonstrate in favor of them. There's a legitimate point of view of Israel, and people are entitled to demonstrate that way. It's when you get people praising terrorists that I have a problem.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it really goes back to our tribalistic identity, right? Our desire for that. You know, I mean, it could be, you know, Palestine and Israel, or it could be that soccer team and that soccer team. I mean, there's just this innate human tendency to be tribalistic, to be our team and their team, and we hate the other team because it means our team is defeated. I mean, at some point, you know, you get rid of that stuff, and instead of thinking in terms of zero or, you know, a negative sum game, that it's a positive. There's actual potential for a positive sum game. There isn't the need for, you know, one team to lose and the other to win. Everyone can win. You know, you raise the tide and every boat's.
Well, I like the way you're using team in a sporting sense here, because in sports conflicts there are rules, and there's an authority, an umpire or a referee who is respected.
Right.
That's
or not. Have you watched football, John?
Respected to varying degrees.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Canadian hockey, same thing.
Yeah. So I want somebody to stand up and show a red card to the Palestinians and the Israelis.
Yeah.
And the Iranians too.
Yeah. And Putin. Yeah,
for sure.
Lots of red cards. Let's do it. Anyway, moving to America, where they are seemingly deliberately polarizing each other against one half against another. You won't believe that the Republicans are cross that Trump is no longer so anti-abortion as he was in 2016 and 2020. Now, what's happened here is Trump has seen the writing on the wall. He has noticed that all of the states which have put the women's rights up to a vote so far have all voted for abortion.
Right.
And so he, being the populist politician that he is, has backed off pro-life.
Okay.
And this means that the evangelicals are going off him. So listen to this. Since July, when the Republican National Committee dropped a federal abortion ban from its national platform, several traditional religious right leaders have suggested that they have been betrayed, raising questions about whether evangelical Christians and conservative Catholics would support former President Donald Trump's current campaign for the White House with the same vigor as they did in 2016 and 2020. They've just had an event. It's been called Pray, Vote, Stand Summit in Washington. And some speakers said things like this. There was the Robert P. George, who is a Princeton University legal scholar, and he said it's tragic and disgraceful that the anti-abortion plank of their campaign has disappeared. There's Tony Perkins, who's president of the Family Research Council, and he said, if Democrats are making this one of their top issues and the Republican response to it is crickets, I don't like that expression, well, it's not going to motivate the base, he said. So there's several people like that complaining that Trump has suddenly gone off the boil as an anti-abortionist.
Well, yeah, I think anyone would know. Yeah, as you say, he's a populist. So, you know, he's still a misogynist. So, I don't know. It's just doublespeak, right?
Yep.
This is right out of Orwell.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
I mean, I'm astonished that Donald Trump seems to be dishonest. I mean, I find it incredible that an election seems to be close with a candidate like Donald Trump. I mean, there is something seriously wrong with America.
Yes,
Yeah.
I
nearly
totally
half
agree.
the country is thinking about voting for him.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree. Totally.
The man, I can't think of a
bizarre.
single redeeming feature that man has.
No. No, I can't either.
Yeah. Well, even, you know, and you may or may not be surprised, but like where I work up in the oil patch, you know, it's a bunch of roughnecks and oil. It's an oil economy, so it's resource led. So they, for whatever reason, are embracing Trump as well. And
Yes.
I see people at camp all the time with MAGA hats on
Yeah.
and flying Trump flags off the back of their trucks, along with, you know, F Trudeau and, you know, all this kind of stuff. It's, you know, and I just go like the insanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And of course, they have nothing to say about the rationale behind it.
no.
You know what I mean? It's just like, well, he's got good policies. What do you mean good policies? Name a good policy. Well, you know, oh, okay, that policy.
Yeah, drill, baby, drill.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's an emotional response, not a
Yes,
rational,
exactly. It's not a
rational
reasonable one.
response. So, also in America, a lot of elections have been funded by Catholic bishops, apparently, and they're not doing it so much. Apparently, if you add up the donations from the bishops in the 10 states that have passed rights to abort laws, it amounts to just over $1 million, which is a third of what they donated from a single Kansas archdiocese for the election of 2022, the midterm election. But they lost that election. The voters rejected the measure that would have removed the right to abortion. And they also lost in Ohio, where they spent $1.7 million to a political action committee. I think these are horrible things. Who wants Anyway, they had a political action committee which is set up to fight an abortion rights ballot measure, rights to abort, and it ultimately passed despite their contributing to this fight against it $1.7 million. In Arizona, where the race is expected to be tight, bishops, Catholic bishops, do not appear to have contributed any money to the anti-abortion PAC campaign. And if you go to Florida, the organized events to prevent a right to abortion have raised $9 million, but supporters of abortion rights has raised more than $90 million. So the American electoral system is riddled with money. And the British one, where there's strict limits. We don't have PACs. You can't buy votes easily in this country. And I mean, I was elected 3 times, and we had, I think it was £200 that we were allowed to spend of our own money, you know, on our election campaign. And this is some years ago, so it's probably more now. And that £200 had to be very carefully accounted for, you know. Yeah. So much for leaflets, so much for telephone calls, so much for taxis. And America doesn't do any of that.
What about Canada? Do you have strict limits?
Yeah, I was a member of council here in our local community, and it was very vigorous and robust accounting that you had to demonstrate, for sure. Yeah, and people were really scrutinizing you.
Good. I mean, America, it's obscene, isn't it? The amounts of money that are spent. And I mean, in this country, we have a scandal where the Prime Minister gets £100,000 worth of gifts.
Yeah.
And, you know, people don't give that money for free, do they?
Right.
They give money to politicians and political campaigns in order to get something back.
Of course. Yes, yes.
And you can see Elon Musk now trying very, very hard to buy
Yeah,
influence.
45 million a month. That's
Yeah.
significant.
Yeah. It's being challenged, of course, through the courts to see, because they don't.
Yeah.
The view of some is that it's not legal, but we wait to see.
Yeah.
He can probably afford quite a good lawyer.
Yes. Yeah, and as we know, particularly in America, justice is not always seen to be done. It's all about how rich you are.
Well, yeah, and I mean that the Supreme Court stuff. I mean that system is so freaking broken. Like, oh my goodness, yeah, it's just amazing.
Yeah,
startling.
We'll come back to America, but
do we leave?
Let's take. Yeah, we're going to leave now because we're going to take a little more humorous visit to South Africa, where there is a common belief that owls, those birds that are a hoot,
they're not real.
No, they bring bad luck and evil.
Ah.
However, some church members had to learn the opposite when they found a bird sitting on the top of the church's building, a western barn owl, during a church service. So they caught it using a stick, hit it until it fell to the ground, took it inside the church, ill-treated it by pouring salt on its eyes and pouring oil on its head. This was captured by the church's videographer and posted on social media. So, on Monday, October the 14th, the Magistrates Court in Limpopo sentenced a senior pastor of that church and 2 congregants, one of whom was a justice, to 12 months imprisonment, wholly suspended for 5 years, or to pay a fine of 20,000 rand, for animal cruelty.
Right.
So there may not be a God, but sometimes there is fairness for creatures.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, that's just outrageous.
There you go.
Wow.
Okay, so it's back to America. The 2024 presidential contest is entering its final days, as we know, and Donald Trump is turning to the group most responsible for getting him this far, evangelical Christians. Trump told a group of pastors in Concord, North Carolina, "I'm here tonight to deliver a simple message to Christians across America. It's time to stand up and save your country." He then went on to say, on November the 5th, Christian voters need to turn out in the largest numbers ever. Meanwhile, in another campaign, his son, Donald Jr., Eric, beg his pardon, took to the stage and warmed up the crowd with a fiery speech that went like this. "It's so clear to me, more so than ever before, that Trump, Dad, was put here for this mission, to save this country. We need God in our life. We need God in society. We need children to respect God. We need God in our schools. And if Kamala Harris won't say it, I will. We love God, and we will always be a nation of faith." Does it make you want to vomit?
Whose faith?
But is Trump a Christian?
No.
I mean, I hate to say it. I think he may well be one of us, may he not? He may be an atheist. Do you remember that wonderful interview where two Christians were interviewing him and they said, "What's your favorite bit of the Bible?" And he said, "All of it."
Yeah.
They said, isn't there one passage that you love? He said, no, the whole thing. And New Testament or Old Testament? Oh, all of it. I mean, this is a man who's never opened a Bible in his life.
Yeah, it was a major dodge. And the one he held up was upside down.
Yes. And now,
and of course, his Bibles are made in China.
Yes. He's selling Bibles, American MAGA Bibles or whatever they're called, at $65. He'd do anything, won't he?
And amazingly enough, I guess people are scooping these things up.
Yeah.
But I think it is costing the evangelical churches, isn't it? Yeah. That they are losing support from people who are just disgusted by the fact that they support Donald Trump.
Yes. There's a split. The real evangelicals, they call themselves. Who say that we're not political. Oh no, we're not political.
Yeah, and maybe some people are withdrawing from the evangelical church altogether because of it.
Yes.
Which is a good thing.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember. I was listening to Michael Shermer show. He's from Skeptic magazine.
Yeah.
He was in an interview with someone. I listened to it this morning, but he quoted some numbers with respect to Pew polls and Gallup polls on religiosity in America, and just how far fallen the Christian demographic has become. Amounting well under 50. I think it was it wasn't. I don't even think it was in the 30s, but
particularly with the 18 to 30-year-olds.
Yeah, and I think that's a great sign. It's just too much. I mean, it's too bad that there wasn't more vigorous education towards critical thinking skills and sort of pluralistic viewpoints, right? Because even in circumstances where they are exposed to other religions, the larger lion's share of any program, they kind of sample all the other religions, and then the last hardcore bit of the course is, it's Christianity and why it's better than all the other ones, right?
Yeah. It ought to be equal shares.
In there, it should have its own thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, I don't know whether you have a misunderstanding about Islam, like I've sometimes been guilty of. I think of Islam as being a joyless religion, which doesn't really approve of partying, alcohol, music, dancing, having your body visible, But it's not true of all Muslims. Take a look at this. Doesn't that just warm the cockles of your heart?
It looks good. Where was it?
I don't know, unfortunately, but did you notice that they weren't even separated by an aisle into male and female?
Right,
Some were sat in their sex, but
the one gal there, she actually looked like Kamala Harris a little bit, I thought.
They were doing this, the heart symbol.
Yeah.
And it was, apart from the actual tone of the music, it was quite a westernized sort of gathering. So I liked that.
Yeah, totally
loosen up a little bit. Well, and clearly it wasn't. I mean, the women's faces were not veiled. They were their hair was not tied back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Liberation. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So I think that's a good note.
Well, that's definitely not Orthodox Muslims.
No. But we want to see more of it.
You might have missed the call to prayer that day.
It's a move in the right direction.
Have you seen the memes that occasionally go around on social media saying what traditional women's clothing is in various Muslim countries? Yeah. And it'll have traditional Afghan women's clothing and traditional Pakistani, Iranian, Moroccan, and so forth. And they're not covering their hair. They're not covering their faces.
No.
The veil has made a comeback, hasn't it, in recent decades?
Yeah.
And it's good to see
reaction
where they're not wearing it. I remember taking a taxi in Turkey from the center of Istanbul to the airport. And I decided, as I do when I'm bored, I think, what will I count? And I decided to count women with a veil and women without a veil.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting. City center, 90% without a veil. And then as you drive through the suburbs and out into the countryside, the percentage with a veil increases.
Yes, yeah.
And it's basically, I think your metropolitan elite, your university-educated women wouldn't be seen dead in a veil. Yes. But your more conservative, more working class, more peasant Turk may well want to wear a veil.
And in some of the more fundamentalist, theocratic, Muslim-controlled societies, they could only be dead if they were veil.
Yeah, I'm glad you got that. I was going to say something to that effect.
Yeah, so I was hoping to end on a positive note with the dancing and so on, but I'm afraid death has reared its ugly head again.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Okay.
Good to see you, Paul.
I'll see you again, Brad.
Good to see you, John.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
This is my new
clergy. Was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the carrying on drag.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that guy?